Have you ever doubted yourself? Or wondered, why me, when confronted with a challenge that seemed insurmountable? This is the story of Gideon, a man who was no stranger to self-doubt, yet through faith, became a hero of his people. Let me take you back to ancient Israel, a time when the people of God were oppressed, their spirits crushed under the weight of foreign invaders. And in this chaos, one ordinary man received an extraordinary call. You're not going to believe how this unfolds. Let's dive in. So Israel was suffering. We're talking real, heavy suffering. For years, the Midianites had ravaged the land, pillaging crops and driving the Israelites into hiding in caves and cliffs. Each season, prosperous fields were left barren. It wasn't just survival, it was humiliation. And here's where we meet Gideon. He was threshing wheat, not out in the open where it was usually done, but hiding in a wine press. Imagine a man hunched over, working in secret, fearing the very sound of footsteps that might signal the Midianites coming. Gideon was no warrior, not at that point. He was just trying to get by, to put some food on the table without attracting trouble. And then, it happened. An angel of the Lord appeared to him, sitting under an oak tree. Picture this, a glowing figure, radiant but calm, who addressed Gideon with these staggering words, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Mighty warrior? Gideon? He must have looked around, thinking, is this guy talking to someone else? Because Gideon didn't feel mighty. He didn't feel warrior-like at all. In fact, he boldly expressed his doubts. "If the Lord is with us," Gideon asked, "why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wondrous deeds our ancestors told us about?" You can almost hear the weariness in his voice. Gideon was wrestling with questions we all might ask during our darkest times. Why me? Why now? Where are you, God? The angel didn't falter. Instead, he looked at Gideon and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" But Gideon wasn't convinced. He had another question. How can I save Israel? My family is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. Now stop right there. How often do we do this? Measure ourselves against a challenge and declare, "I'm not enough." Gideon's answer feels so relatable, but God's response, through the angel, was clear and firm. "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive." If this is giving you chills, wait, it gets even more compelling. Gideon still wanted a sign, proof that this encounter was real. So he prepared an offering, goat meat, unleavened bread, and broth. He placed them on a rock as the angel instructed, and in one spectacular moment, the angel touched the offering with his staff, and fire consumed it, just like that. The angel vanished. Gideon was trembling, shocked, but his faith deepened. He built an altar right there and called it, "The Lord is Peace." Now comes the turning point. God had one more test for Gideon before he could take on the Midianites. Gideon was instructed to tear down his father's altar to Baal and the Asherah pole beside it, symbols of idol worship in Israel. Imagine the courage it took not only to defy his oppressors, but to challenge the spiritual complacency of his own people. Gideon did it, but he did it under the cover of night, afraid of how the people might react. When morning came and the town discovered what he'd done, they were furious, demanding his death. But Gideon's faith held. So did his father, who defended him. And slowly, Israelites began to see Gideon as a leader. But Gideon still had doubts. Can you blame him? Before leading an army, he sought more confirmation from God. Remember this iconic moment? Gideon laid out a wool fleece on the ground, asking God to make it wet with dew while keeping the ground dry. And God didn't disappoint. He did just that. But Gideon wasn't satisfied. He asked God to reverse it, make the fleece dry while the ground was wet. And again, God obliged. By now, Gideon's faith was stronger. God's patience throughout this process, incredible. Now here's the massive showdown. Gideon assembled an army, 32,000 men against the Midianites, whose camels alone were said to be like sand on the seashore. But God had other plans. "You have too many men," God said. Too many? Yes, because God didn't want Israel to think their victory was due to their numbers. So, through a series of tests, Gideon's army dwindled down to just 300 men. Imagine standing with 300 against countless enemies. The odds were unimaginable, but this was God's plan. With these 300 men, armed with trumpets, jars, and torches, Gideon executed God's strategy. In the dead of night, they surrounded the Midianite camp. At his signal, they blew their trumpets, smashed the jars, and revealed the torches. Chaos erupted. The Midianites turned on each other in confusion and fled. Gideon's obedience and God's power delivered Israel from oppression. The story doesn't end there, but this victory was a turning point for the nation. What can we learn from Gideon? First, that doubt doesn't disqualify us. Even in his uncertainty, Gideon was used by God. Second, that faith isn't the absence of fear, it's taking the next step despite it. And third, when God calls us, he equips us. Who we are or who we think we are doesn't limit the plans he has for us. So the next time you feel like saying, "I'm not good enough," remember Gideon, a man who started his journey hiding in fear, but ended it as a mighty warrior of God. If God can use Gideon, imagine what he can do through you. #Bible # Jesus, #God, #Jews, Christian, #Christianity, #faith. Ensure the expanded voiceover is even more entertaining, but that it maintains the same style, tone, and key points as the original.